Most people come to Ibiza for the music, but beneath the surface of that famous blue water, something ancient and irreplaceable has been quietly dying. The Balearic Sea around Ibiza recorded its warmest temperatures in history during the summers of 2025 and 2026, with coastal waters breaching 31 degrees Celsius. Heat that an ecosystem built over millennia was never meant to survive. What is unraveling here, beneath the surface and across the pine-covered hills above it, is a story most visitors never see. The living thing placed beneath that famous blue water has a name. It is Posidonia oceanica, a seagrass so ancient that calling it old feels almost inadequate. The seabeds between Ibiza and Formentera are home to Posidonia meadows, estimated to be around 100,000 years old, meaning the organism growing silently beneath the boats and the jet skis and the summer crowds was already ancient when the Phoenicians first sailed into this bay. The Roman Empire rose and fell. The Moors built their walls on the hilltops above. Fishermen cast nets from wooden boats for generation after generation. And all the while, this meadow kept growing, 1 centimetre at a time. Posidonia grows so slowly that a single square metre can take up to 100 years to regenerate, which means every anchor dragged carelessly across the seabed, every degree of warming held for a week too long, represents a loss that no living person will see repaired. These meadows serve as habitat to more than 400 species of marine plants and 1,000 species of marine animals, functioning as nursery, feeding ground, and shelter all at once. Posidonia can absorb carbon dioxide at roughly 15 times the rate of a comparably sized area of Amazon rainforest, a fact that is quietly staggering when you consider how little of the world has ever heard of it. The turquoise clarity that makes Ibiza's water look almost artificial, the kind of blue that fills 1 million photographs every summer, is not a trick of the light. It is the meadow, filtering and oxygenating, and holding everything together from below. Now, pull back from the water for a moment, because the story happening above the surface is just as extraordinary, and just as precarious. On the sun-warmed limestone rocks of Ibiza's coastline, something small and jewel-bright flickers between the shadows. The Ibiza wall lizard, Podarcis pityusensis, is the only endemic land vertebrate of the Pityusic Islands, found nowhere else on Earth in its natural habitat. Some subspecies carry a blue so vivid it looks painted on, a colour that exists only here, shaped by millennia of island isolation. These lizards have shared this coastline with every civilization that ever settled it. They darted between the feet of Phoenician traders. They warmed themselves on the same rocks the Moors quarried for their fortifications. They are, in a very real sense, as native to this island as the island itself. The Ibiza wall lizard faces mounting pressure from rising temperatures, pushing the animals deeper into shade during the hottest parts of the day and narrowing the window in which they can safely feed. An animal that has survived on this island for thousands of years is now retreating from the heat of a single decade. And then there are the Balearic shearwaters, seabirds that nest in the sea cliffs above the meadows, diving for the small fish that the Posidonia nurseries produce. They are among the most critically endangered seabirds in the world, their entire breeding population concentrated in these islands, their survival tethered directly to the health of the water below them. When the meadows thin, the fish thin. When the fish thin, the shearwaters struggle to feed their chicks through the summer. The chain is that direct, that unforgiving. Posidonia begins to suffer measurable adverse effects once water temperature reaches 28 degrees Celsius. And in the summer of 2025, the Balearic Sea didn't just brush that threshold. It broke through it and kept climbing, and is continuing to climb. the seagrass began to bleach at its edges. The shearwaters found fewer fish on their dives. The lizards pressed themselves into whatever shade the rocks could offer. 3 species, 3 completely different scales of life, from a microscopic meadow root to a soaring seabird, all of them quietly signaling the same thing. But to understand what is really unraveling here, we need to go deeper, both into the water and into the chain of consequences that 1 degree of warming can set in motion. The Ibiza wall lizard has survived on these rocks for thousands of years. But would you have guessed that a single decade of rising heat could force it into retreat? Drop your answer in the comments below. Now let's follow that chain of consequences down into the water, where the real unraveling begins. Drop a few meters deeper, below the tourist snorkeling zones, below the anchor lines, into the cooler blue where the light turns from turquoise to a deeper, quieter shade. And you find the Gorgonian sea fans, branching coral-like organisms that grow across the rocky walls of the Balearic seafloor, like the ribs of a vast, living cathedral. Most visitors never see them. Most people have never heard of them. But they are the architecture of the underwater world, and in 2025, they were suffering. When the Posidonia meadows began to bleach at their edges, the damage did not stop at the seagrass itself. The Gorgonians, which can take decades to grow a single colony to any meaningful size, bleach when marine heat waves linger too long. The thermoclines shifted upward, pressing warm surface water deeper than it should go, and the Gorgonians responded by bleaching across vast stretches of the Balearic seafloor. They do not bounce back quickly. What is lost in a single summer can take a generation to rebuild. If it rebuilds at all. This is the pattern that keeps repeating in Ibiza's waters. Not a single catastrophic moment, a slow, cumulative stripping away. In these last 2 years, marine heat waves affected virtually the entire Mediterranean Sea, with conditions that triggered widespread bleaching and mass mortality of marine species. These extreme temperature events create favorable conditions for invasive species, affecting fisheries in the process. That last consequence is the one that fishermen working out of Ibiza's harbours have been watching unfold in their own nets. They are hauling up creatures they have never seen before in these waters. Warm water jellyfish blooming in numbers that outcompete native species for plankton. Pufferfish and other invasive species moving into the Balearic Sea, establishing themselves in waters where they have no natural predators and no ecological checks on their spread. The food web is not simply warming, it is being colonized by a new cast of characters, while the species that belong here thin out and retreat. The fishermen notice these things first. They always do. They carry in their memory a picture of what these waters used to hold, the size of the catches, the species that came reliably, the rhythms of the sea across a working lifetime. And what they are describing now is not a fluctuation, it is a replacement. The fish they have always relied on are appearing in smaller numbers, in shorter seasons, at depths they did not previously occupy. The sea is still full of life, but it is increasingly a different life. Above the waterline, the heat pressed inland too. Ibiza's interior pine forests faced a summer of prolonged drought stress, trees already weakened by heat, unable to defend themselves against the explosion of pine processionary moth populations that thrive when winters are too warm to kill them back. Stripped canopies, stressed root systems, forests that are drier and more fragile than they have ever been, waiting for the spark that now arrives earlier in the season and burns hotter when it does. 3 ecosystems: the seagrass meadows, the underwater forests of Gorgonian fans, the pine-covered hills above the coves, all telling the same story from different angles. Remove the Posidonia and you lose the carbon sink, the fish nursery, the buffer against erosion. Remove the gorgonians and you lose the structural habitat that dozens of species depend on. Remove the forest cover and you lose the watershed, the soil stability, the last green shade above the shore. But here is what matters most, and it is the thing this island makes unusually clear. The Posidonia meadows that remain are still there. The shearwaters are still nesting in the sea cliffs. The wall lizards are still warming themselves on the limestone. Ibiza is not a place where the damage is already done and the story is over. It is a place where the story is still being written, where the ecosystem is intact enough to show us precisely what we stand to lose, and fragile enough to remind us that the window for it to matter is not permanently open. What Ibiza is in the end is a mirror, not for one hot summer, for every summer that follows it. If Ibiza's story moved you, if the sight of a 100,000-year-old meadow retreating from heat, of endemic lizards fleeing their own island, of seabirds starving as their nurseries collapse, if any of that landed, subscribe. Watch our next video on the Mediterranean's vanishing coral world.